Good afternoon. My name is Abigail Madrigal, and I am presenting to you today Sharona Jones's case in 1980s, 1990s, the crack cocaine epidemic. Let me first off start off by thanking you for allowing me to present to you today, as well as giving you some insight of what is going on in our law enforcement, our criminal justice system. I am coming to you today outside with the luxury of, being free, as opposed to some people that are actually incarcerated right now due to first-time offenses, non-violent offenses. For example, Sharona Jones, she is in jail for life because of a one-time non-violent offense, and it was her first time. I have the luxury to be outside. I have the luxury of roaming free, so to speak, as opposed to others that unfortunately have been incarcerated. Before I start this, I just wanted to give a clarification for Sharona Jones. She was sent to jail in 1997 and was convicted in 1998, originally under 7 counts of, 6 counts in regards to possession with intent to distribute, aiding and abetting, and 1 count of conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine. She was acquitted of 6 counts, but was convicted of 1, the conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine, which basically meant that she should have known powder would be converted into cocaine. She is now serving a life sentence. With that being said, it is in my understanding that lack of cultural competence comes from the policing, over-policing in certain races and ethnicities. For example, during the 1980s and 1990s crack cocaine epidemic, the law enforcement went after those of certain races, and unfortunately, due to discrimination towards African Americans, if they fit the profile, they went after them. And it became a thing where they went into certain houses knowing that somebody was in there and arrested them. And it was the characteristics that they showed, unfortunately. And it was a wrong place, wrong time type of environment during the crack cocaine epidemic in the 1980s and 1990s. Sharona Jones, same thing. She was trying to get by, trying to help out her family. Her mom is a quadriplegic, so she basically took on the role of head of household, and unfortunately, in her doings to survive and providing for her family, was crossed with the wrong people and was sent to jail. Militarization of police, same thing. They were breaking into homes. They were ransacking locations. If they heard a simple notification, they went there. And it wasn't fair to most African American communities, because they were trying to just live their lives, trying to obey the law, but they were under certain laws. They were under certain stereotypes, certain biases, certain prejudices, and unfortunately they were not assisted. Same thing with Sharona Jones. Militarization of the police, they ended up becoming more willing, so to speak, to take the law into their own hands, and that is what they did. They charged her with 30 kilos of cocaine, which would have, for anybody else, had she been Caucasian, she probably wouldn't have received that big of a sentence. She probably would have been reduced, because if I remember correctly, the two that cooperated, they were released. They basically helped, and they were let go, I believe, after 18 months. Field decisions at the time, during the 1980s, 1990s, the crack cocaine epidemic, a lot was happening with right on the spot arrests, as well as criminalizing those that fit the profile, unfortunately. Now, with the field decisions for Sharona Jones, I would think that during her court sessions, she was, unfortunately, during that time, judges took it upon themselves to convict to what they felt what was the best fit. And the best fit at the time for Sharona was a life in prison for a drug conspiracy. Now, what if she had a mental illness? Would it have made a difference? Take, for example, her mom. Her mom was a quadriplegic, and she was also under the conspiracy that she was assisting her daughter. She ended up getting 18 months and was released. Would that have happened with Sharona Jones had she been mentally ill? I'm not quite sure, but if it had the same effect as her mother, it probably would have been the same effect for her. And what if she was also part of the LGBTQ community? At the time, in the 1990s, it had been around that time that I believe the AIDS epidemic was also going on, and it was considered to be like anything else. It was supposed to be contagious, supposed to be, contact and all this. However, they ended up finding out that it can be treated, and it wasn't until shortly after that, which I believe was Magic Johnson, when he was diagnosed with AIDS in 1991, and he's still alive today with the medications that he's been taking, living a normal life. Had that been Sharona Jones's case, I honestly don't think she would have been taken lightly. I think it would have been a little harder because also around that time, Pride was around, and police, law enforcement didn't like it, and so they came around and again, militarizing. They went over to, break down walls, break down certain establishments, because they knew what was happening behind those doors. So what I propose in this aspect, due to lack of cultural competence, I propose that military police should be trained to know what to look for, what standards should be, presented at the time of arrests, should be initiated, so that way this does not happen, that those that were crossing the street, so to speak, were arrested because they crossed the street. It shouldn't happen like that. Now, as it relates to the courts, I say that discrepancies related to drug crime sentencings around that time was a little harsh. As I mentioned before, with Sharona Jones's case, she got life for a non-violent offense, for a first-time offense, and wasn't even given a chance to hear herself out, wasn't able to provide any justice. She was sent to jail for 30 kilos of cocaine under the conspiracy. If I remember correctly, it wasn't until 1982, if I remember correctly, that people were realizing that cocaine can be turned into crack, by eliminating the salt or the free base part of cocaine. And not a lot of people knew that. I can tell you right now, I didn't know that. I knew that cocaine turned into crack. I just didn't know the process. I didn't know anything like that. So maybe she didn't know either. So the conspiracy under that, the prosecution ended up saying that she knew about it, that she should have known that it could be turned into crack. You can't assume that. The courts automatically assume that she did that. There shouldn't be any assumptions whatsoever. Whether it's beyond a reasonable doubt that she would have been able to know that. And if she really didn't know that, she didn't know that, yet they didn't give her a chance to plead that out. Her bail, unfortunately, she did not get bail. But what if she had? What would she have done? I think she probably would have gone and had a better lawyer, somebody that was able to help her out, was able to get her out of this situation. But unfortunately, she didn't have that opportunity. She didn't have the resources that other people have. Again, what if she was Caucasian? Would she have had the same luxuries? Would she have been able to get out and do it? Yes, because of what was happening at the time. It was honestly, it was just the wrong place, wrong time, and it is still happening to this day. Socioeconomic status for Sharona Jones, she was in the same place as majority of the people in Terrell, Texas at the time. They were either homeless or they were living paycheck to paycheck. They were working multiple jobs to, make ends meet. And that's actually what she did. She started working at the age of 14. She opened up her own salon. She opened up her own restaurant to help out her mom, who again was a quadriplegic. She was involved in a car accident, and she didn't have the means to do anything else. So she was making it work, except when it came down to what she was doing, selling crack, it ended up catching up to her. It was the wrong people she was dealing with. And this is what she quoted. "It was fast money," she says now. "Biggest mistake I ever made," coming from her. But at the time, it felt right. I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all done it, or we've all done something where it was just like, you know what, I have to do this in order for me to make things happen. And that's what she did. Now, as for discrepancies related to the death penalty, yes, she didn't get the death penalty. She ended up getting life in prison, but it's basically the death penalty because she, being in life in prison, she's going to die in there, unfortunately, unless things change. In 2014, Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, he granted clemency to those that were incarcerated for a first-time offense, non-violent offense, and who had served already 10 years of their sentence with no significant criminal history and no connection to gangs, cartels, or organized crime. Unfortunately, she did not make it on that list. But why? Why didn't she make it on the list? Why wasn't she part of that list that former Barack Obama actually created? That would have been something that would have been passed on, would have been something that she would have been out of jail. What are we in 2021? She would have been out of jail for 7 years had that happened. But unfortunately it didn't. And that is a discrepancy right there for you, because for some weird reason, President Barack Obama didn't have her name on it. He had other names that were also incarcerated at the time, but not hers. Now, had she been mentally ill, has she been part of the LGBTQ plus community, maybe there would have been some leniency, some form of remission for what she did. Maybe she would have been out sooner. Had she had part of those ties, it probably would have been a different case, and she probably would have been set free. So what I propose to do in the court aspect of the criminal justice system is basically being retrained, basically understanding that there are different cultures that are not the same. There are different cultures that don't think the same, that don't act the same. Everybody is entitled to their own individual being. And yet, here we are, 2021, trying to figure out, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to use the past to justify our present? And that's one of them, is that we need to be a little more open at the time of what is going on, of what we can express to other people. Because otherwise, everybody's going to be afraid of going to court. And that's not the society that we want. So we need to be more uplifting, be more understanding. If anything, reaching yourself out there to the community and realizing that this is what we do and we can help you out. But if you aren't reaching out, nothing can be done. Which now leads me to the corrections portion of our criminal justice system and how they lack cultural competence. Geography in female prisons. Geography in it of itself, they should be able to familiarize themselves with the location that they're at, what kind of community they're going into, different regions of what is happening. Again, taking Sharona Jones' case, she's from Terrell, Texas. Around that time in the 1990s, a lot of people were in impoverished locations. They were living in poverty. They were, doing what they had to do to make ends meet. And again, with Sharona, that's what she did. She was living in that type of environment, and corrections should have known that. And I'm not saying that she should have been let go, been free, all of that, but it should have been something that would have given her an out, so to speak. Had they ran her name and noticed that she was a first-time offender, maybe they would have let her off. Maybe they didn't want to do paperwork that day. I don't know. Corrections are being affected by medical issues. However, with that, Sharona Jones wasn't able to, leave prison to go visit her mom when she died. That says a lot right there. That these correctional facilities aren't granting those that actually have, family members out into the community, basing it on, their experiences, basing it on the reason why they're in jail. Your past shouldn't define you. We all move on from where we started to where we are today. And I feel that the correctional facilities should have realized that and let her go to see her mom's funeral. The lack of oversight in private prisons. What if she was in a private prison? Would that make any difference? Maybe not. Some private prisons, they have a tendency to get a little handsy, get a little too much with the female population, and it wouldn't have been a good environment. And they also try to cover it up because they're being paid privately by different corporations, and the oversight with that would have probably been sweep it under the rug and call it a day. The placement of transgendered people. What if she was a transgender? We don't know. What if she was put into the wrong correctional facility? Had that been something that what did happen, and due to our correctional facilities having that lack of cultural competence, they wouldn't have known what to do. They wouldn't have known that they have particular drugs that they need to take, medications that they need to take, their hormone imbalances. Would they have known that? No. Same thing with females being in prisons. Do they have the right necessity supplies? When a female's on if they're during menstruation, will they have the proper female products? Will they have that? I don't know. But with different researches and different understandings, it could be possible that we would be able to, in the correctional facilities, be able to invest in having those supplies, invest in having those medications, so that way it benefits everyone, and not just because they're in there, they're being punished. No, they're still human beings. They are still part of the community. They are still part of civilization. And we shouldn't be putting them to the side because they're different. No, they're not. They're just like everybody else. In female prisons, officers, I personally am uncomfortable with it. Take, for example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show, but Orange is the New Black. There was a correction, and I'm not saying everybody's like this, except that one in particular. There is a male officer that has a tendency to take advantage of females in the prison. How many of it goes reported? How many of it goes reported? How many of it goes unreported? How many women are afraid to be walking around because there's a male officer there? How many women are afraid to speak their mind and have it twisted? Another show that comes to mind is Law and Order Special Victims Unit. Detective Olivia Benson, she went undercover at a correctional facility and to try to apprehend one of the guards that were in there that were undercover. And she went down into the basement with this officer, and he tried to sexually assault her. Thankfully she was able to get out of there, without being hurt. But she did get out of there with a little bit of trauma, a little PTSD. And how much of that is happening? We don't know, because we don't know if it's being reported, or we don't know if it's being swept under the rug, or even if it is being reported, what's happening in the correctional facilities. And then lastly, the treatment of mentally ill, disabled, and pregnant inmates. These correctional facilities, again, have limited supplies unless they are having an investment in having these different medications, these different products to help those. Again, going back to medication, the mentally ill, some of them do need medications. Think of Concerta. Concerta is for those that have ADHD, ADD. That'll help them calm their nerves. Pregnant inmates, they need prenatal vitamins. They need other medications had they need it for glucose or high blood pressure, anything like that. And then same thing for transgendered people. They need those medications for their hormonal imbalance. This lack of cultural competence in the correction facility needs to be improved, needs to help those that are in those facilities, that are in that type of situation. And if we don't help them, there isn't going to be much for us to do. And not only that, it's gonna probably bring more people in there that have the luxuries of being out because of being a first-time offender. And then those that are living in impoverished locations, they don't have the means to make bail. They don't have means to do any of that. We need to step up and see what we can do for our community, what we can do for those that can't afford these certain situations. Okay. Which now brings me to this: diversity in recruitment in the criminal justice professionals. If we have diversity in the recruiting process, more people, I think, would be friendlier to approach, would be more comforting than those that we have a historic relation to in a negative aspect. For those that are living in the African American communities, they often relate to policing as a negative force because of what happened under the Jim Crow laws. What happened through that? Just for being African American, you were apprehended, you were criminalized. The history it will forever be embedded in us, and that is something that we need to get out of. And in the Asian American communities, they didn't approach law enforcement because in their native country, law enforcement was basically like a dying situation. That would be the only time you would ever go to a law enforcement. Other than that, if you get criminalized in their native country, it was basically like going to hell. What kind of living is that? So with diversity in current demographics, it would be in a more friendly, approachable environment. It would be more of a more interactive, more approachable. I mean, I think I wouldn't be as fearful. I would be more like, all right, I can come over and talk to you. Hi, my name is Abigail. Pleasure to meet you. Things like that. Gender equity. There should be more females out there. There should be. I think, in my point of view, because You know, when you think of police officers, you think of authority figures, you think of those that get things done. When you see that in a female, you know that things are going to get done. I'm not saying anything towards men that they can't anything done, but as a female, seeing someone like that, someone that I or younger generation little girls, they can look up to someone, and that is what we need. More diversity, more people out, more women out there, either, you know, being an officer of the law, being a judge, being a prosecutor, being an attorney, being anything higher up that would want us to want to look at them in a more positive atmosphere. And the most important thing is mirroring society. Mirroring society, to me anyway, is more of a reflection of what you want to see. You know, policing or the correct law enforcement, they see the community sometimes in a harsh light. But are you seeing in the harsh light because of the way you perceive it, or is it because it's what you're reflecting? Honestly, I think it's what you're reflecting. If you're coming in scared, you're going to get scared back. If you're coming in hot, you're going to get hot back. You might as well come in a neutral environment, not coming in so hostile. Be what you want the community to be. And I feel that your energy, if your energy comes in positive, your energy comes in a ray of light, you're going to get that light back. And I feel that if we have that type of environment, that diversity, we would be able to bring out the light. We would be able to bring out this beautifulness that our communities have, and not be so afraid, and not be taken aback. Going back to Sharona Jones's case, had that happened during that time, had she had a more positive atmosphere, her mother, and I get it, you know, with an accident, you can't really predict when it's going to happen. But had that accident not happened, what kind of environment would she have been? Would she have still continued going to school, knowing that her mom was now taking care of her, knowing that things are going to get better because her mom was healing, her mom was, you know, working, and she was able to go to school? Would she have had a better outcome in life? Would she have resorted to drugs? I like to think she didn't. In my positive reflection, I like to think she didn't. She had that positive role model in a mom, and that's what happened. She was able to take all that out and put in the positivity, and she did not have to resort to drugs. So with that, how Sharona Jones's case, and with the policing, courts and corrections, and diversity, how all of that corresponds to Sharona Jones's case, that had those been in a better light, had it not been during the crack cocaine epidemic, her case would not have gone as far as it did. If we change that moment in time would be a reflection, would be a stepping stone in the right direction, and not create that type of boundary of knowing that the color of your skin is the reason why you go to jail, is the reason why you can't talk to law enforcement. We don't want that. We want to make sure that everyone feels equal. And in order for that to happen, there needs to be a change. Thank you.